What if your personality is not who you are, but just a bunch of survival strategies that your nervous system created long before you even had a freaking choice? This is the Connection Catalyst podcast episode number 2. And I'm Karolina, the Connection Catalyst, as the name indicates. And today I'm so excited to tell you about my favorite topic, or one of the favorites, which is Enneagram. Enneagram is a weird word. It comes from the Greek ennea or ana, which is 9, and then gramma, which is figure or graph, because it's depicted on the graph. That's why this podcast is actually better listened to on YouTube, because I'm going to show you the graph. I made it especially for you to make it easy to understand. For me, Enneagram is literally a manual to humans because it shows us our strategies, how we cope with life, our childhood wounds, how we react in stress and in relaxation, our defense mechanisms, and much more. And I'm super excited and super passionate about it because when I discovered it 10 years ago and I started observing myself and the people around me, and I started really seeing the patterns of behavior that people around me have and how it fits together, it became like a tool that I use in everyday life. And also me and my friends used to, guess the types of everyone that we meet. And I saw that, for example, if my mom has a specific personality and my best friend has the same personality, and then their partners also have same personalities, they actually literally act the same. Sometimes even they say the same things. But I will tell you about the examples from my real life later on. At first, today, I would like to just introduce to you the topic of Enneagram, show you the graph, show you how to read it, and what it even is. Because when you see the graph, it might be a bit confusing. So I highly recommend to see it on YouTube so that you can follow me, where I'm going to be pointing out all these things as I show it to you. So, where does the Enneagram even come from? No one freaking knows, because it's an ancient symbol, but actually it was introduced more to the West by George Gurdjieff in 19th century. He didn't use it as personality typology, but he was using it to research the universal laws and processes in the world. And after that, Oscar Icazo, I don't know how to say this, probably Icazo or Icazo, actually in 1950s or 1970s, connected the ego fixation to the whole graph. And then later on, we had Claudio Naranjo that was developing this concept in the 1932 up to actually 2019. And then he was actually bringing the Enneagram as a use to therapeutic and academic world, because this can be used, as I said, as a manual to humans. So if you use it in psychology or psychotherapy and you really discover what it can bring, it can be super useful to understand the whole mechanism of how human mind works. And he was a psychiatrist, so he actually integrated the Enneagram with Gestalt therapy, with the modern psychology, and also psychiatry, because he was a psychiatrist, right? So Enneagram is something that we can use to discover ourselves, our emotional schemes that we are working with, and the areas of self-development. And when we discover our type, which I will briefly tell you how to do it, it's nice to actually see about the advantages and about the disadvantages of our specific type. And remember, in this podcast and the following podcasts about Enneagram, I'm going to generalize, right? So you might not resonate with everything that I'm saying when I'm talking about the type, maybe like 70%, because you might have already done work on yourself. So let's say the unhealthy ego is going to be completely different than healthy ego, right? So whatever I say, please filter it through your own resonance and see what resonates and see what doesn't. Because, for example, when we have a giver personality type and it's a healthy giver, you're going to give unconditionally. But if it's an unhealthy giver, still there are some traumas, some patterns not reprogrammed, then you're going to give conditionally. You're going to expect people to give you something back or manipulate through your giving, because I have given you, so now you have to give me. So pay attention, because if you know your type, not necessarily the whole description of the type will resonate with you. And what I'm going to mention in all these episodes is going to be the unhealthy version, because it's way easier to see the unhealthy programs that we have, automatic programming that we have in our subconscious mind, than a healthy one. Because if someone is healthy, it's just love and light all the time, and we don't actually see, the traits that much, because everyone is just like chill, right? So keep it in mind when I'm going to be talking about these types. Also, if you want to do Enneagram test online, it's very important to follow these guidelines that I'm gonna say right now, because otherwise your test might be not adequate to who you really are. And because we only have one main type and one secondary type, and then, of course, we have traits of all, but we have one core wound or one main strategy of how we act. If you actually don't find your specific type correctly, you might not utilize it very well, because the guidelines that are going to be given for a different type are not going to apply to you. So, in my view, our core type doesn't change over life. But if you only look at how you are right now, then you might change the type in comparison to, for example, if you did the test 10 years ago. That's why, in order to do the Enneagram test well, first of all, look at your whole life, and especially at your teenage years, because up to age 10, we are programmed with our subconscious program, right? We are kids, we are just developing our emotional body, we don't have developed mental body, so we just take everything as a sponge. So this is the programming phase. Then more or less from 10 to 20, we are just playing out the program. So as teenagers, we are just acting what the program tells you to do. But actually, afterwards, when we are 20 or something, 20 plus, we are like, oh shit, maybe I don't want to act like this. Maybe I want to change something about myself. And then our type also will change accordingly. Because Enneagram is about our subconscious mind. It's not something like astrology or human design or whatever else where it's dictated by the date of birth and that's it. This is something moldable, even though the type does not change. It just becomes more and more healthy, and you can also gain more and more traits from different types when you are along the self-development journey and you understand what the traits of different types can bring to your life. So, first, look at your whole life and your teenage years. Second of all, please be very honest about how you are right now rather than about how you would like it to be. Because a lot of people that made the test actually answered as the potential of how they would like to act rather than how they are really right now. So we need to be brutally honest with ourselves of how it is rather than, seeing the better version of ourselves, how we want it to be. And also, sometimes when we are in highly stressful situations, we can actually come out with the test telling us that we are this type that we actually go into in stress. Because in Enneagram, there's also shown that we act like a different personality when we are in stress and when we are in comfort. That's why we want to do it when we are quite neutral, not when we are massively stressed, because then also the type can be shown different. So, with these guidelines in mind, if you decide to do the test, you're very welcome to do it. There are many of them, but usually try to do the one that has at least 30 or 40 questions, because otherwise it might not be very accurate. Okay, so let's go into the graph of Enneagram, shall we? I know that it might seem a little bit complicated, but don't worry, I will explain everything in detail so you will know what's happening in here. So there are 3 triads, so-called, in Enneagram, because there are 9 types and we share it in 3. These are the green lines over here. So let's start from the emotional triad, 2, 3, 4, the violet color on the graph. These are the people that perceive and receive the world through their feelings first, primarily. And because they feel so much and because they are so empathetic, they also feel when someone judges them in the wrong way, not in the way that they want to be judged. That's why when they feel everything, the primary emotion, the fundamental feeling that they need to go through and that happens for them the most frequently is shame. Because, if you feel that someone is directing the energy to you that is not really who you are, you might feel ashamed, right? Shame is the natural emotion that lets us be compliant to the tribe so that we're not kicked out and we don't feel the survival mechanism kicking in when we are, on our own, right? In the jungle. Like in the previous times, this is how it was. So we needed to be compliant to the rules. So shame protects us from being kicked out from our tribe, group of people, society, and so on. And these emotional types are mostly based on the heart. If you feel like you felt most shame, more so than fear and anger in your life, then you're probably in this emotional triad. Then we have the intellectual triad, 5, 6, 7, blue color in here, where we are directed by our head. And this triad is actually struggling the most with fear. Why? Because if you're a very intellectual person, you're going to think, oh my God, what if this happens? What if that happens? And I'm in this triad because I'm a 6 wing 7, means my main personality is the loyalist and my secondary is the enthusiast. So I know exactly what I'm talking about. So we are overthinkers, right? We think about everything, and fear is the emotion of the mind because we always think, oh, what if this happens? What if that happens? So if you feel like you're like me, when you have a lot of fear and less shame and less anger, you are probably in this triad. And then we have the action triad, 891, red and pink color here. So these are the people that are directed by the body, right? Because action means that we want to do something. And anger is the emotion that is underlying for these people because when you're angry, what do you want to do? Just go and smash some shit. You want to do something with your body. You want to hit something. You want to scream. So that's why these people usually struggle the most with anger. So this is actually the first step if you want to find your type, to see, okay, what type am I? Do I feel first or think first, or do I take action first? Because maybe I'm the person that first takes action and then I think about it, or I feel, oh my God, it wasn't actually a good decision, right? Or maybe I feel first and only then I take action. Or maybe I even struggle with taking action. I feel and I think and I never really do. Or maybe I think first and then take action and then feel. Whatever it is for you, you can first discover, okay, in which triad am I? Am I feeling first, thinking first, or acting first? And also, the second question, because that might be not clear for you, to ask yourself is, okay, which emotion throughout my whole life I have been feeling the most? Shame, fear, or anger? Because this will already help you see in which triad you are. And then, when you know the triad, there is only 3 types that you can discover, right? So you can pretty easily then tell which type you are. So this is the first thing, the triads. This is the very, very simple distinction with these 3 different emotions and 3 different operational systems, let's say, of how Enneagram works. So now let's go into the other things. Look at the graph again. So each number in Enneagram also has something called wings, meaning these are the personalities that are neighboring. For example, personality number 1 will have a wing 2 and wing 9. And usually one wing is more prominent than the other. So for example, if I'm a 6 wing 7, I see that I'm mainly 6, my secondary is 7, but it doesn't mean that I don't have a 5 next to me. That means that just my 5 is like lower than my 7. Let's say that I act more in 70% in my 7 wing and only 30% in my 5 wing. There are people who are also balanced in the wings. So for the personality 1, it will be 2 and 9. For personality 2, it will be 1 and 3. For personality 3 will be wing 2 and wing 4, and so on. And speaking of wings, actually, it might happen that a 5 wing 4, for example, will be completely different to 5 wing 6, because the neighboring personality will change the person so much that they will literally look like a different person to you on the outside, but the core wound will be the same on the inside. Same with subtypes that I'm gonna go into after I explain this whole graph, because there are also subtypes to each Enneagram. So when we have the wings, we have the personality that is primary, then we have the secondary, and we know that the third personality in traits will be the other wing. So now looking at the graph again, we have triads, we have the wings, and there are also these little arrows in here. What do these arrows show us? So these arrows show how we act in stress and in relaxation. And I'm going to go into how each type acts specifically in stress and relaxation in my next episodes. The next episode will be emotional triad, the further one intellectual triad, and the last one the action triad. So to hear more about it for your specific type, please watch the upcoming episodes. But for now, I will just explain what it means. So you see that one end of the arrow that is just like lines shows us relaxation. For example, I am a 6. So when I'm relaxed, I go into the best traits of number 9. And when I'm stressed, I go into the worst traits of number 3. So in my case, for example, when I'm relaxed, I'm a great mediator. That's why I'm a great couples therapist. And I have always actually been the person that people go to for advice, because I could always help my friends resolve the conflicts, mitigate them, and see both perspectives. But on the other hand, for example, when I was still studying, I was at school, I was very stressed, meaning that I was an unhealthy achiever. I had to always be the best, I had to always have the best grades, and I was constantly studying. And even my mom told me that she's one of the very few parents that she knew in her life where she told her kid not to study anymore. So it's kind of funny, but like I could really see the unhealthy achiever that I have to be the best. I have to prove to myself that I'm going to have the best grades. And I was always great at everything and all, subjects and everything like that. So, yeah, we also can actually check our type by these arrows. So, if you're confused, for example, whether you are a giver or an artist, which is easy to confuse because both of these personalities are in the emotional triad. So, both of them will have shame, both of them will have actually wing tree inside of them. But then, as a giver, you actually go into artist when you are in comfort, and you go into the boss when you are in discomfort, in stress. And it's very different to an artist because the artist in relaxation will go into perfectionist and in stress will go into the giver. So when you can't really discover what your type is, you just look at these arrows and see how do I act in stressful and in relaxed situations, because that will also indicate my type when I don't know exactly what it is. And even based on that, you could already possibly tell more or less what it is that is your type. But in the next episodes, I'm going to give you a lot of examples from real life of how to discover it and how to see, okay, am I displaying the same characteristics so I can easier see my type and my partner's type and my family's types and my friends' types and so on. So we got the triads: shame, fear, anger, emotions, intellect, action. We got the stress and comfort, which is easy to read. We got the wings. So I know that, for example, as an artist, I could be wing 5 or wing 3, and I can see both of these personalities within me. So now, more or less, we know how to actually discover our type. But there are also other things that I want to mention on this podcast because there are also subtypes to our Enneagram. In Enneagram, we call these subtypes three instincts. So they're not really like traits of personalities, more like survival priorities. And usually we have one of them dominating, and then one that is supporting, and one that is just more like a blind spot that we don't really see. And then one of them usually runs in the background of our life all the time. So by knowing the traits of specific instinct, we can also discover, okay, which subtype I am. Because one personality that is the same number will act completely differently, especially in social setting, to the same personality with a different subtype. So that also could be confusing when you're trying to discover your type. So first type is the self-preservation instinct. What does it mean? These people are more like lone wolves and they are more caring about their own safety. The question is, am I safe? So they focus on the safety, on the resources, maybe also on topics like money, like home, like energy levels, and so on. Internal resources as well, not only external resources. So they might choose, let's say, partners or friends based on reliability and stability. The stress can show up in the body for them because they are constantly like thinking about their safety, right? So these are more like people that can be on their own for a lot of time. This self-preservation subtype is often self-sufficient, as I said, lone wolf, like a hermit, and they are caring the most about safety. So maybe they can't relax until they know how much money they have in their bank account, right? Or thinking about the survival, like, can I do what I love and still survive, or something like that. And they are like less emotional or less dramatic, like they are showing their emotions less in the surroundings, so they can be sometimes confused with other types. Then we have the second type, which is sexual type. Not to misinterpret it that, you want to have sex with everyone, which is my subtype actually. And it has nothing to do with sex, more with intensity, with passion, with aliveness. So the question here is like, am I alive? So these are the people that in social settings, rather than connecting to everyone or being more on their own, they will actually connect to few people, but on a deeper level because they want depth. They want magnetism, they want transformation, they want intensity. So how it shows up, maybe you have some strong emotional highs and lows, right? Because you're so passionate. Or maybe you can be a person that is like all or nothing. Or maybe you just really seek, like me, these deep romantic or friendship connections and bonds with people, right? So we want to be seen, we want to magnetize with each other. And we are drawn to things like shadow work. We like to be very passionate about things that we're doing and so on. And yeah, if we are not living like in intensity, we might actually lose interest. Like we need things to be going on, you know? But of course, the shadow side is that we can have a burnout, like I had in my business where I had to stop for a year because I was so intense in my masculine energy. And yeah, we can also confuse intensity with love, and we can have emotional dependency on people and other things, right? But this is sometimes like also seen as toxic, this kind of instinct. But when it's healthy, it's actually bringing a lot of depth and passion and transformation. So it can be really, really nice. And then the third instinct that we have is the social instinct. There is this question in these people: do I belong? And this is the person, when you're in a social setting, that is going to go and connect to everyone in the room. So they are like the glue of the society. So when you enter the party, you want to meet as many people as possible. You don't really care about like meeting a few people deeply. You care more about meeting everyone. And it's all about the community, the roles, the influence, the contribution, and being seen as someone valuable in the group. So maybe you are a leader of the society, or maybe you feel anxious when disconnected from the group of people, or maybe you want to contribute meaningfully to some greater purpose where you serve the group, right? Or maybe you're just very aware of the group dynamic and social energy. And I think my main subtype is sexual, but I also have the social type in me for sure, because I love connecting with people and I actually feel super comfortable in groups of people. So these are the people that maybe seek power in the group, or maybe they really care about being like a good member of the society or some kind of membership. They're really, really social, right? As the name indicates. But the shallow side of it can be that they are actually losing authenticity to fit into the group, and they might over identify with the status, you know, how the group sees them. And also, they might feel like negative emotions when they don't feel useful in the group. So, social instinct is not really about being extroverted as much, although oftentimes it shows like this, where the person is just talking to everyone, but it's about the energetic attunement to the group field. And most people that I know that they are social subtype of Enneagram are very extroverted and they want to talk to everyone. And it's pretty interesting because, like, if you have a different subtype of Enneagram, you really feel so differently in the same setting as the same personality with a different one. So, for example, my friend is the self preservation type. And in social settings where there's like a group of people, let's say 20, he literally can't really make a nice conversation unless he talks to someone one on one, because maybe he doesn't know when to enter with what he has to say because some other people are already talking and he needs more time to process whatever was said and to say something, right? So it's way easier for him to connect when he can be one on one with someone. And so, for example, these people might not resonate with each other if one is super social and one is super self preservation, and they might only find alignment and really connect on a deeper level when they are talking to each other as the sexual type, which is one on one, right? So it's pretty interesting because the same personality, the same number of Enneagram can act completely differently in social settings. That's why I mentioned it here, because you might find that when you find your type and subtype, you're going to see like, okay, I have the same type as, for example, this friend, but I act really differently. So I would never guess that this is the same type because our co-wound is the same, but the behavior externally sometimes can be very different. The instinct that we actually neglect the most is called our blind spot in Enneagram terms. So, for example, for a social blind person, so the person that doesn't actually display the social subtype traits, it could be isolation. They might be too much on their own. For the self preservation blind spot, it could lead to burnout. And for the sexual blind spot, it might lead to lack of passion or lack of depth in our relationships. So actually, It's nice to see what your subtype is, and then to see what other subtypes are, and then to gain whatever traits you want from other subtypes. Because again, Enneagram is not something we can't change. Of course, this is instinct that we're talking about right now, but still, with awareness, with being present, with being conscious of how we act, we can still actually shift our reactions and our behaviors, even if they are instinctual, because instinct is in the body. It's a program. It's the subconscious mind. And this is what my whole work is based on the body, on the subconscious mind, and how to reprogram it. So it's not like you have one type and you have it, until the rest of your life the same, because your personality does not define you. You can actually change it if you know what it is, if you get intellectual awareness about it, and then you start realizing, being present in the moment, observing your thoughts, observing your emotions, and seeing, okay, now I'm not in my automatic program. What can I do about it? Do I want to act like this or not? And for me, Enneagram, when I started learning about it 10 years ago, has been one of the most useful tools to actually gain awareness about myself. So when I discovered that I'm a 6-wing-7, I started researching, okay, what are the 6-wing-7 areas of development? What are my positive traits, negative traits? And what can I struggle with? What could be the good profession for me? And so on. So it could be really a good tool for us to gain awareness of what's going on inside that is just something that we are displaying, copy pasting from our childhood rather than who we really authentically are in the moment. And when we know intellectually our type, that's why I'm going to talk so much about it for 4 episodes, then we actually can see these programs running more vividly, more clearly. And of course, other tools like meditation and, shadow work, working with inner child, belief work, and so on can be helpful to reprogram it. But even just the conscious awareness of our program and seeing how it plays in us in the moment can already shift our behavior. Because if we just see our thought and see what's going on inside rather than going with it straight away, we can actually choose and we can decide, and we don't need to go with what shows up inside of us, right? So for me, it has been one of the most helpful tools ever for my self-development. And now all my close friends know Enneagram, and we crack Enneagram jokes all the time. So it's really fun when you go into it with your friends and when you are learn about it. So if you feel like it's fun for you as well, please subscribe to my channel, because the next 3 episodes are going to be more in depth about each type. And also send it to your friends who you might want to learn it with, because it's so much more fun when you learn it with a group. And then we can actually meet a person and be like, oh, which number do you think this person is? And, just have fun with it. And this is how I utilize it at the beginning. I discovered my type, and then I made all my friends and family also take a test. And then I started observing the same traits in the people that had the same personality, but also their discrepancies between the specific types. And then when you know someone for years, which I've known my besties for over 15 years, like multiple people, then I really see what they struggle with, what problems they have, what challenges, but also what advantages they have. So it's way easier to learn about Enneagram in real life when you know the types of people around you. So I highly recommend to do it like this. For now, I'm going to end here because it's already a very long episode and I still have a lot to say about Enneagram. I hope you enjoyed it, and looking forward to the next episode because this is like a topic that I'm super passionate about. So I hope to see you in the next video. And for now, thank you so much for being here with me. And if you want to learn more about me, just go to karolinakuraj.com, which is KAROLINA.KURAJ.com. I'll put the link in the YouTube and Spotify description. If you want to contact me, all the info is there. And for now, thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next episode.